Before the 15th century, information was a harvested crop, grown behind high walls and consumed almost entirely by kings and clerics. Creating a single book meant months of manual labor. Scribes sat in royal workshops, dictating and illustrating by hand. Outside those walls, the average person lived a different reality. Knowledge traveled through sound. People gathered in villages to hear folk tales sung from memory. Because texts were incredibly expensive and rare, the ruling class held the books. By dictating who could read and what was written down, they maintained a complete monopoly on the intellectual life of society. Then, the mechanical printing press arrived in Europe. The ability to mechanically reproduce words shattered that information bottleneck. Suddenly, cheap, pocket-sized books called chapbooks began appearing in local taverns. The strict line separating the quiet, elite reading culture and the loud, everyday oral culture blurred, as people who couldn't read listened to others read these new texts aloud. This chart shows the exact mathematical relationship that followed. As the volume of printed books skyrocketed across the centuries, the cost of acquiring those books dropped perfectly in tandem, creating an era historians refer to as the Reading Mania. Making words cheap and plentiful was the essential first step in transferring intellectual power away from the elite and into the hands of the everyday citizen. That transfer of power terrified traditional authorities. For the first time, everyday people could buy local books, read them in private, and form their own distinct opinions. In the 16th century, an Italian miller named Vernacular got his hands on some newly available books. He read the Bible on his own and developed a unique view of God and creation. His interpretations infuriated the Roman Catholic Church. They hauled him in twice and ultimately executed him for holding beliefs that opposed accepted teachings. Vernacular's death was driven by the Inquisition, a former Roman Catholic court system designed specifically to identify and punish anyone spreading unauthorized, heretical ideas through these cheap new prints. Desperate to regain control, the church started heavily regulating publishers. In 1558, they even established a formal index of prohibited books to legally ban certain texts from circulating. The printed word proved to be a severe liability for powerful institutions. Once people could read and share ideas freely, the established religious hierarchy faced a direct threat to its existence. By the late 18th century, this new culture of reading fueled the Enlightenment. Philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau argued that society should be governed by logic and reason, rather than religious custom or the absolute power of monarchs. Underground literature mocked the royal class, leading people to view the traditional order as illegitimate. Even if someone couldn't read, political cartoons made revolutionary concepts instantly clear. Images of an exhausted peasant, physically carrying the bloated nobility, communicated the reality of oppression. These pamphlets provided the vocabulary and the medium required to openly question authority. This massive shift toward public dialogue and debate laid the essential psychological groundwork for the French Revolution. The absolute power of the state cracked under the weight of informed public scrutiny. As Europe entered the 19th century, mass primary education policies triggered vast leaps in literacy. New reading audiences exploded, specifically among women, children, and factory workers. Publishers responded with a wave of practical literature aimed directly at the working class. Magazines like this one offered cheap, weekly installments covering agriculture, history, and science, designed explicitly for self-improvement. The poorest citizens viewed literacy as a vital survival tool. Workers would pool their money to rent old newspapers and read them by firelight because they couldn't afford candles. Autobiographies from this era detail grueling efforts to get an education. The Russian revolutionary author Maxim Gorky wrote extensively about his own struggles to learn to read against severe economic odds. Mass literacy finally equipped the working class with the exact tools they needed. They transitioned from passive subjects into active participants capable of shaping their own societal roles. This same dynamic played out globally. In colonial India, print became the central arena for debates. There, it fueled intense clashes between social reformers and religious orthodoxy. Printed tracts and independent newspapers allowed the colonized public to coordinate their resistance. They read reports about current affairs and formed cohesive national movements across vast distances. The British colonial government recognized the danger and panicked. They passed stringent laws to suppress the Indian press and shut down dozens of newspapers to crush public opinion. Mahatma Gandhi argued that Swaraj, the movement for Indian self-rule, was deeply tied to the right to publish. He stated that the fight for independence meant a fight for the liberty of the press before all else. That continuous drive for expression still echoes in the massive high-speed presses churning out thousands of pages today. The history of print tracks a centuries-long expansion of human liberty, proving that the power to read is ultimately the power to question the world.
Think